Stone Ridge had always been a quiet town, the kind where everyone knew each other's business before the gossip had even fully formed. It was a place of deep-rooted traditions, where families stayed for generations, and outsiders were forever marked as newcomers. Among the town's most respected names was the Masterson family, known for their successful hardware business and unwavering presence in the community. Jack Masterson grew up under the weight of his family's expectations. His father had once run the store with a firm but fair hand, teaching Jack the importance of hard work and loyalty. But while his father was a man of consistency, Jack had always been restless. He was driven, not just to maintain the family legacy, but to carve his own path. He was well-liked, admired even by his peers and the town elders who saw in him the promise of a worthy successor. Laura Johnson, on the other hand, had a different story. Unlike the Mastersons, the Johnsons weren't town royalty, but they were respected nonetheless. Her parents, Brenda and Thomas, worked tirelessly to provide a stable home, and Laura had grown up with a mix of love and discipline. She was smart, ambitious, and independent, but deep down, she always felt the need to prove herself, to be more than just another girl from Stone Ridge. Their romance was the kind that small-town legends were made of. Jack and Laura had met in high school, their connection instant and undeniable. He was the charming, confident boy who could make anyone laugh, and she was the strong-willed, intelligent girl who saw through his bravado. They balanced each other in ways neither had anticipated, and before long, they were inseparable. Marriage had seemed like the natural next step, and for a while, they were happy. But youth, as it often does, brought mistakes. The pressure of adulthood, of responsibilities neither had been ready for, began to crack the foundation of their once solid love. And then, one night, everything changed. A betrayal, a moment of weakness, a mistake that could never be undone. Jack left town without a word, leaving Laura behind to face the consequences of their unraveling life alone. For 6 years, Jack stayed away. He built a life elsewhere, far from the whispers and the judgment, finding solace in work and purpose in raising Kansas, a girl who had become his entire world. But fate, relentless as ever, had its own plans, and a call from home brought him back to Stone Ridge. Now, he stood on the threshold of a past he had tried to outrun, unaware that the ghosts he had left behind were still waiting. Brenda Johnson turned to her daughter, her voice laced with curiosity. "I ran into Cynthia Larson at the store today. She mentioned that Jack is back in town. Apparently, he's stepping in to manage the family business while Jeff recovers from his accident." Laura's hand clenched around the can she was placing in the pantry, the impact a little too forceful. "Jack?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Brenda nodded, eyeing her closely. "Yes, Jack. Do you even remember him? Your husband, or ex-husband? Are you two officially divorced yet?" A tired sigh escaped Laura's lips. "Mom, I really don't want to talk about him." She hesitated before adding, "And I have no idea if we're legally separated. I never received any divorce papers." Brenda arched an eyebrow. "Did you ever file?" Lowering her gaze, Laura admitted, "No, he left. I just assumed he'd take care of it." Brenda shook her head in disbelief. "That's absurd. He disappeared for 6 years. No messages, no explanations. You mean to tell me you're still technically married to him? Do you even still have feelings for the man?" Silence stretched between them as Laura stared at the floor, unwilling to answer. Brenda's tone grew sharper. "You're not one of those women who tolerate mistreatment, are you? Jack abandoned you. That's on him. If he's back, you should divorce him. He was great when you married, but a man who vanishes doesn't deserve your loyalty. You're young. You can find someone better." "Mom," Laura said firmly, "I'm 27. I have a good job and my own house. I'm not dependent on you or Dad, so please stop trying to run my life." "I just want you happy," Brenda insisted. "You've changed since he left. If he cared, he wouldn't have disappeared. Maybe he left for someone else." "Jack wouldn't cheat," Laura said quickly. Brenda looked surprised at her defense of him. Laura had always maintained they hadn't fought before he left, but she never explained why he vanished. Brenda doubted she'd ever know. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. Memories of Jack haunted her, how he'd been charming and devoted before everything fell apart. She blamed herself for their problems. Now, with him back, she dreaded facing him. What could she even say? 2 days later, Laura visited her mom again. Her younger sister, Kate, had just returned from her summer job. "I saw Jack today," Kate said casually. "He came by to play some ads. Want to hear about it?" "If Laura doesn't, I do." Brenda interjected. What does he look like? Still ridiculously handsome, Kate teased. No weight gain, no hair loss, just a rugged look, jeans and a t-shirt. Did he say anything? Laura asked softly. Not much. He dropped off the ad and paid, but he had his daughter with him. She's beautiful, Kate added, watching Laura closely. He has a daughter? Brenda exclaimed. That's why he left. Another woman and a baby? I don't think so, Kate argued. She's too old to have been born after he left. Probably 12 or 13. Jack's 28 now, Brenda said thoughtfully. He'd have been 16 when she was born. Doesn't add up? He introduced her as Kansas. She's athletic and clearly adores him, Kate said. Is her hair dark like his? Laura asked hesitantly. Blonde. Stunning, really. Oh, and technically, since you're still married, you're her stepmom, Kate joked. Enough, Kate, Brenda scolded as Laura fled the room. There's more to this story. Secrets don't last long in a small town. Meanwhile, as Jack and Kansas left the office, she asked, Who was that girl watching you? Kate, my ex-wife's sister, Jack replied. She probably didn't expect to see me. Was your wife as pretty as her? Kansas asked. Even more, Jack said softly. Kansas studied him. You loved her. Why did she cheat? I wouldn't have told you if I knew we'd move back here, Jack admitted. Don't mention it. It's her story to tell. You still care about her, don't you? Kansas said. Jack smiled. What happened hurt, but it led me to you. I wouldn't trade you for anything. Kansas grinned. Brian was a great dad, but I'm glad I get to call you Dad now. That's what Brian wanted, Jack said warmly. He trusted me to raise you, and I'm honored. How will you find me a new mom if you're still married? Kansas teased. Let's handle school and settling in first, Jack said firmly. We'll sort the divorce later. Okay, Kansas replied. But every woman in town will want to marry you. We just need to pick the right one. If she doesn't accept you, she's not for me, Jack said with a chuckle. You're my priority. Kansas hugged him tightly, grateful for his unwavering love. At home, Jack laid down rules with his mom, Janet. No interfering in his personal life, especially where Laura was concerned. Surprisingly, she agreed. Later, Kansas mentioned meeting Kate. Grandma, do you think Laura is as pretty as Kate? Laura is beautiful, Janet admitted. If it were up to me, those two would still be together, and you'd have siblings. But let's change the subject before Jack hears us. At soccer tryouts, Laura noticed a skilled blonde girl. As she approached, the girl turned to face her. Hi, I'm Coach Masterson, Laura said. You're talented. The girl's eyes widened. I'm Kansas Masterson, your ex-husband's daughter. If you think I'll cause problems, I'll switch sports. Laura reeled, but quickly composed herself. Your playing time depends on your effort, not your dad. I'll be fair. Kansas grinned. Grandma knew you were the coach, but didn't tell Dad. He'll be shocked when I tell him. Laura tensed. Your father's not here, is he? Nope. He's working, Kansas replied. Then lowering her voice, she added, Dad said you're the prettiest cheating strumpet he's ever seen. Laura felt like she'd been punched. Her breath caught and her knees buckled as she sank to the grass. Kansas had expected anger, denial, maybe even indifference. But not this. Not raw devastation. For years, she had resented Laura Masterson, the woman who had supposedly shattered Jack's heart. She had rehearsed this moment, imagined the satisfaction of delivering those words. But now, watching Laura crumble, something felt wrong. Laura Masterson wasn't the villain she had built up in her mind. The girls on the team respected her, even admired her. And her reaction, genuine pain, not guilt, made Kansas hesitate. Suddenly, she wasn't sure who the bad guy really was. Kansas trudged to the bench, bracing for the inevitable dismissal. What did you just say to Coach Masterson? Demanded a woman she assumed was the assistant coach, flipping through her clipboard. What's your name? Kansas Masterson. I'm sorry if I caused trouble, she said. The woman's eyes widened. Masterson? Are you related to Jack Masterson? He's my dad, Kansas said, standing taller. You should leave, the woman said bluntly. Coach doesn't need reminders of her deadbeat husband on the field. Kansas nodded and turned toward the gate, but before she could leave, a hand caught her shoulder. She spun around, only to find herself in Laura's trembling embrace. I'm so sorry, Laura whispered, clutching her tightly. Kansas stood frozen, unsure how to react as the entire team stared in stunned silence. Laura pulled back, wiping her tears. Your dad is a good man. Please stay. If you're anything like him, you'll be an incredible player. I won't let this happen again. Stay, Kansas. Please. Kansas hesitated, then allowed Laura to lead her back to the bench. Laura turned to the team. I know you all saw what happened, so let me explain. This is Kansas Masterson, my ex-husband's daughter. Seeing her caught me off guard. I haven't seen her father in 6 years, and even though I knew he was back, I wasn't prepared for this. Be kind to her. She's not responsible for the past. She then looked at Kansas. Is your mom around? I'd love to meet her and tell her what a wonderful daughter she raised. Kansas's voice softened. My mom died when I was 3. It was just me and Dad after that. I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I was being a brat, and now Dad's punishing me for it. Laura tensed, the timeline clicking into place. Kansas's mom had died a decade ago when Jack was still in high school. That didn't add up, but she let it go. We got off on the wrong foot, Laura said. Let's start fresh. I'm Coach Masterson, and you're Kansas. Let's play some soccer. After practice, Kansas climbed into her grandmother's SUV. How was your first day? Janet asked. Good, Kansas replied. The team's strong. I think we'll do well. And the coach? Janet asked, her voice careful. Kansas smirked. You mean Laura? Janet sighed. Yes. How did she take it? Kansas shrugged. She was shocked. But she's different than I expected. She still cares about Dad, even after all this time. Janet's expression softened. Jack never told anyone why he left. One night, he just got in his truck and disappeared. I don't think he ever spoke to Laura again. Kansas clenched her jaw. She knows why. She's the reason he left. He's not the bad guy here. Janet raised an eyebrow. And you know this because... Kansas folded her arms. Dad told me if you want details, you'll have to ask him or Coach. At dinner, Jack cut into his pork chop. So how was soccer practice? Kansas shot a glance at Janet. Rough start. Coach didn't take my last name too well, but we worked it out. Jack noticed his mother wince. There was more to the story. Your coach is a friend of Laura's, isn't she? Kansas grinned. She is Laura. Jack froze, processing. Janet smirked, clearly enjoying his reaction. Mom, Jack sighed. I need an update on Laura's life. Spill. Janet leaned back, savoring the moment. She teaches math at Stone Ridge High and has coached soccer for 3 years. Her team only lost twice last season. Personally, she's still single, or still married to you, depending on who you ask. Most folks assume you left her for another woman. That's not true, Kansas blurted. Kansas, Jack warned. Respect Laura. Don't make me apologize for something you said. Kansas dropped her gaze. Jack exhaled. What did you do? Kansas hesitated. I called her something bad. Janet raised a brow. How bad? Kansas swallowed hard. I should probably whisper it. She leaned over, murmured it in Jack's ear. His entire body stiffened. Kansas, he said slowly, rubbing his temples. I told you that in confidence. Now I have to fix the mess you made. I regretted it the second I said it, Kansas admitted. It hurt her way more than I expected. She hesitated. Oh, and she told the team you're her ex-husband, so we can finally find you a new wife. Jack groaned. Laura barely held it together through practice, but the moment she got home, she broke down in tears. She told herself the next practice would be easier. No more surprises. Then she nearly walked straight into Jack Masterson. She had just grabbed her gear from her SUV when she turned and found him standing there. Laura, he said carefully, can we talk? I owe you an apology. She blinked. An apology? Jack sighed. Kansas told me what she said. It was out of line. I raised her better. He rubbed his neck. It's my fault. I told her why we broke up. She and Brian are the only ones who know. Laura swallowed. She's young, Jack. She wanted to hurt me. Jack nodded. Yeah, but she's not the only one still hurting. Laura hated how good he looked. Simple jeans, a fitted t-shirt, strong arms, that damn jawline. He was still the man she had loved. She didn't say anything untrue, Laura admitted, her voice unsteady. Unless you still think I'm beautiful. That's the only part you'd disagree with. She quickly wiped a tear before it could fall. Jack's voice softened. I don't want you suffering over what happened 6 years ago. It's in the past. We've moved on. Just like that, Laura said bitterly. We pretend we were never in love, never married. Easy. Her voice cracked and tears spilled over. Jack wanted to hold her, but he knew better. So he just stood there, watching. His gaze traced the curve of her jaw, the graceful line of her neck, the strength in her stance. Despite everything, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever known. Laura took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Jack, for everything. I was a fool when I slept with him, and an even bigger fool for letting people believe you abandoned me. I thought if I kept quiet, you'd come back. that if I admitted what I did, we could never fix things. So I let everyone blame you." Her voice barely above a whisper, she added, "I'm going to tell the truth." Jack sighed. "I never cared what people thought. Easier for them to question my sanity than my character." Laura studied him. "You've always been a good man." She hesitated. "Your daughter is amazing. Please don't be too hard on her. She'll be my best player." Jack nodded. "Good seeing you, Laura. Let's keep things simple. No drama." He hesitated before adding, "You're even more beautiful than when we got married." "Thanks," Laura said with a wry smile. "And you've bulked up. Chiseled suits you." Jack noticed a group of girls whispering nearby. "Was that Kansas's dad?" one asked. "He's so hot." "Why did Coach let him go?" another wondered. "My mom's single," someone joked. That night, Laura had dinner with her family, a routine after practice. "How's the team looking?" her father asked, loading his plate with potatoes. "As strong as last year?" "Maybe my best team yet," Laura admitted, debating whether to mention Jack and Kansas. "Your star player's back, right?" Kate asked. "We've got a new standout," Laura said carefully. "You saw her the other day." Kate's eyes widened. "Jack's daughter? She's on your team? You can't make this up." "She's fast, smart, athletic, and a good kid," Laura replied. Kate grinned. "Did she know her stepmom would be coaching her?" "She was just as surprised as I was," Laura said. "But I think we'll get along." Janet spoke up. "Have you seen Jack? Did he have the nerve to face you?" "I saw him today. We talked. It wasn't as bad as I expected." Janet frowned. "And?" "He apologized," Laura said simply. "It doesn't change the past, but it was an honest conversation. No blame, no anger. He was a gentleman. He even told me I look better now than when we were married." "Hallelujah!" Janet threw up her hands. "So, you're finally divorced. Time to move on to someone who deserves you." Laura's voice wavered. "I almost had it all, Mom, and I lost it. I didn't deserve a good husband. I didn't keep the one I had." Her father muttered, "Maybe I should track him down and knock some sense into him." Kate smirked. "I wouldn't try it, Papa. He's got that don't mess with me look now." "Did he seem conflicted?" "That's an understatement," Laura admitted, wiping her tears. "I appreciate you wanting to protect me, Dad, but don't confront Jack. He's different now, stronger, more sure of himself." Janet huffed. "So that's it? He disappears for 6 years, comes back with a blonde daughter and offers no explanation? How did you not slap him?" Kate cut in. "Mom, please, look at her. She still loves him, more than the day he left." Laura shook her head, breaking down. "I'm a fool. Say it. I ruined the best thing I ever had. I deserve this." Kate took her hand. "You're not stupid, sis. I don't know what happened, but if you still love him, I'll help however I can. I just want you to be happy again." "There's nothing anyone can do," Laura whispered. "He divorced me. It's over." Kate hugged her, silent but determined. She was going to find Jack. She needed answers, and maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to fix what was broken. Jack was about to give orders to his crew when Kate Johnson walked in. His men, well aware of his past with her sister, fell silent as she approached. "What can I do for you, Kate?" Jack asked, keeping his tone professional. "Lunch at Ellie's, noon. My treat," she said. Jack couldn't refuse, not in front of his crew. Besides, he had always liked Kate. At the diner, she stood and hugged him. "Thanks for coming. You look good." "You've grown into a stunning woman, Kate." "Good for my ego to be seen with you," Jack teased. "You always were a charmer," she said. "Let's eat first, then I have questions. Starting with, how did you get so jacked?" Once they ordered, Jack filled her in. "After I left Stone Ridge, I reconnected with Brian Masterson, my dad's cousin's son. He was older, a widower, raising his daughter alone. Kansas was 7 when I met her." He hesitated. 18 months ago, Brian was diagnosed with cancer. We had grown close, and he knew how much I cared about Kansas. Before he passed, he helped me adopt her. It wasn't easy, but we finalized it just before he died. Kate softened. "That must have been hard. Kansas adores you. I saw her at work the other day, but how did they let a single man adopt a teenage girl?" Jack sighed. "I didn't realize Laura had never filed for divorce. On the paperwork, I listed myself as married. I thought I still was." Kate nearly choked on her drink. Laura thought Jack had divorced her. Jack thought Laura had divorced him. That was useful information. "She's my whole world now," Jack continued, "but she worries about the adoption process. She knows how single men are scrutinized when adopting girls. She keeps pushing me to find a wife. What she really wants is a mom." Kate tucked that away for later. Which brings me to another reason I asked you here. You've seen Laura. She's beautiful, successful, and as far as I know, hasn't dated since you left. Is there any chance of working things out? Jack shook his head. Not happening, Kate. We're different people now. Our lives took separate paths. You've both changed for the better, Kate argued. She still loves you. Jack leaned back. Did she ever tell you why I left? She took all the blame. Never said a bad word about you. Jack smirked. Well, I'm back now. Took me 6 years. Kate studied him. So, what have you been up to? You're clearly in great shape. Brian owned a warehouse. His late wife had a dance studio there. He added a gym, then a dojo. 2 years ago, we started yoga classes upstairs. Believe it or not, I became a personal trainer, a yoga instructor, and a weekend sensei. Kate laughed. Not what I expected. Jack shrugged. It worked. I even finished my degree and got a teaching certificate. Helped when I was coaching martial arts and yoga. As they left, Kate hugged him. I'm sorry you won't give Laura another chance, but I'm glad we can be friends. I'd like that, Jack said. Tell your folks I said hi. Kate smirked. Might want to avoid them. They're still mad about how things ended. Jack chuckled. Not surprised. Your family always had your backs. The next morning, Laura felt lighter than she had in years. Making peace with Jack and herself lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. At practice, she noticed Kansas stretching while the other girls watched, fascinated. How do you stay balanced like that? One asked after toppling over. My dad taught me, Kansas said. It's a mix of yoga and martial arts. Your dad can do that, another girl asked skeptically. Most guys with muscles don't try, Kansas said. They prefer the fighting part. Maybe he could teach us, another girl suggested. Kansas hesitated. I don't know if Coach would go for that. Dad's really careful about working with underage girls. There's always another adult present. If Jack wants to show these girls how to stretch, I'll chaperone, Laura said, stepping closer. Might even intimidate the competition. Jack was surprised when he arrived to pick up Kansas and found the team and a few moms waiting for him. Dad, they want to learn my stretches. I told them you might do a session after practice, Kansas said. Jack's expression softened. I'll do it, but I need an adult present. Kansas already told us, Laura said. I volunteered. Some of us moms would like to join too, a red-haired woman added. Jack smirked. All right, wear something comfortable. The girls will pick it up fast. Moms, don't get frustrated if they outpace you. Jack never kept the sessions under an hour. The girls were determined, and 3 single moms showed up religiously, clearly more interested in Jack than yoga. But Laura was different, friendly, professional, never flirty, never distant. Before a big match, Kansas set up a Bluetooth speaker, leading her team through stretches to music. The routine caught the attention of opponents and spectators alike. The psychological edge paid off. They won in a landslide. Afterward, Kansas approached Laura. Coach, have you ever thought about entering Harper's tournament? Laura crossed her arms. It's a tough competition, mostly top-tier players from different schools. The 12-14 division is perfect for us, Kansas said. We could win, or at least hold our own. There's a $500 entry fee, Laura pointed out. The school won't cover it. Kansas was ready for this. If we register as an independent team and a sponsor covers the cost, will you coach us? Laura glanced at her players. Their determination was clear. They wanted this, and they wanted her to lead them. You know this won't be easy. These teams are stacked with all-stars, Laura warned. Kansas didn't flinch. I played in this tournament last year. We won 2 games and barely lost the third, to the team that won it all. We're good enough. We just need the right coach. You've done your homework, Laura said. Who's the sponsor? Local businesses pitched in, Kansas said quickly. Entry fees and hotel costs are covered. The tournament is over Columbus Day weekend, and if we make the final, we'll be there 3 nights. Laura admired Kansas's drive. She was already thinking about the championship. Even against stronger competition, Laura refused to crush that ambition. All right, let's do it, Laura said. The best way to get better is to play the best. Yes! The team erupted in cheers. Kansas handed Laura a slip of paper. Here's the site. I set up an account. Just confirm before midnight. They need 1 more team to complete the bracket. The entry fee is already paid. Laura smirked. You planned this well. Our team name is the Ridge Runners, Kansas added. We're getting custom shirts with our names on the back. It's going to be epic. When the two were alone, Laura gave her a knowing look. Jack's the sponsor, isn't he? Kansas grinned. Our sponsor prefers to remain anonymous. But if you hadn't agreed to coach, the deal was off. Apparently, our sponsor thinks you're a great coach and a good influence on us impressionable girls." "So, does that mean Jack will stay away?" Laura teased. Kansas laughed. "Not a chance. He's watching everything. He just wants the best for me and the team." 2 weeks later, the Ridge Runners warmed up under a bright Saturday morning sky before their first tournament match. A surprising number of Stone Ridge fans had traveled to support them. Jack stood among them, cheering as Kansas led the team, keeping spirits high. He noticed the opposing team eyeing their synchronized stretches with curiosity. The game started with a shock. The opponent scored within the first minute. Then again, 2 minutes later. Laura's stomach tightened. Her team hadn't been behind all season. An injury briefly paused play, giving Laura a moment with Kansas. "You see what's happening?" Laura asked, voice steady. "That girl is controlling the game. Every time she gets the ball, she's a threat. Make sure she's never unguarded. If we shut her down, we have a shot." The Ridge Runners adjusted, marking the opposing star, limiting her chances. At halftime, they were still trailing by 2. Laura huddled the team. "They're focused on Kansas. That's fine. When she moves to one side, pass to the other. Their goalie hasn't been tested. Start taking shots." The second half opened with relentless pressure. 2 rebounds found the net. Then, in the final minute, Kansas broke free and scored the winning goal. The Ridge Runners had pulled off an upset. The girls celebrated, sprinting to Laura and their cheering fans. Jack swept Kansas into a bear hug before setting her down, grinning. One of the team moms kissed his cheek. Laura felt a strange pang of jealousy, but shook it off. She turned, only to find herself wrapped in strong arms. For a fleeting moment, she let herself enjoy the familiar embrace. Jack had always been strong, but now he felt like steel. She wasn't small, yet he lifted her effortlessly. "Incredible coaching," Jack said. "Kansas told me you were great, and she was right. Thanks for everything you've done for them." "Thank you for sponsoring us," Laura replied. "Some of these girls wouldn't be here without you. That was generous." "I'd do anything for Kansas," Jack admitted. "She loved this tournament last year. And she thinks you're a better coach than her old one." "Dad," Kansas called, "if you don't want me calling her Coach Mom, maybe let go so the rest of us can hug her." Jack chuckled, setting Laura down. "Sorry, Laura. Got carried away." "I don't think she minded," Kansas teased. "You already have a room, Jack," Laura joked. Jack smirked. Her mom had the same sense of humor. The next morning, Kansas dominated, scoring 3 of the team's 5 goals in a 5-3 victory, sending them to the semifinals. Their next match was against Kansas's former travel team. Before the game, she chatted with her old teammates. It was clear she liked them, and that their parents adored Jack. With limited seating, fans from both teams mixed in the bleachers. A few moms took turns hugging Jack, wishing him luck. The game was intense. Since the tournament was a fundraiser, high school players officiated. Most parents were understanding. Then a bad call happened. A throw-in mistakenly awarded to the Ridge Runners. A large man stormed onto the field, berating the teenage referee. His voice boomed with threats. Laura was already moving as the girl burst into tears and ran, straight into Jack's arms. He held her protectively. A woman's voice rang out from the stands. "Jack Masterson is about to kick that guy's A." The man hesitated, sizing Jack up. Jack didn't move, just kept his voice low and steady. "Apologize to Macy and leave. These girls are doing their best. They don't deserve this." The man shifted, uneasy. Another voice called out, "You better listen to Jack, buddy. You're about to regret this." Laura turned. Macy's mom. She'd seen her earlier. The man grumbled an apology and slunk away. The girl in Jack's arms wiped her eyes, then kissed his cheek. "Thank you, Jack," she said. "Mom was right. You were ready to take him down." Applause rippled through the crowd. "Macy trained at Jack's dojo," her mother explained. "She thinks the world of him, and I don't blame her. Jack doesn't tolerate bullies." "I was worried Jack might get hurt," another mom whispered. Macy's mom laughed. "Jack? Honey, that man wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds." The game resumed. In the final minute, Kansas sent a perfect pass to a teammate, who buried it in the net, securing the win. Afterward, Kansas hugged nearly every player on the other team. Jack watched, proud of her sportsmanship. Macy's mom hugged him tightly. "Macy knew she could count on you. She really looks up to you, Jack. Her grades have improved and she's heading to college next year to study teaching. You helped set her on the right path." "Why was Rick Jefferson even here?" a Ridge Runner's dad asked. "Backbone," his wife answered. "Sarah, the girl who scored the winning goal, is his niece." She must be mortified. The championship game was set for the next morning. With schools closed for Columbus Day, the tournament would wrap up with a final match and an awards ceremony. The Ridge Runners had dominated so far, improving with each game. Their fans were in awe of how quickly they adapted and refined their skills. With less than 3 minutes left in the championship, a Ridge Runners defender intercepted a pass. Kansas seized the moment, sprinting past defenders and firing the ball into the net, tying the game. The Stone Ridge crowd erupted. Their opponents, unfazed, quickly reset. Both teams fought with everything they had. In the final seconds, the other team scored, clinching the victory. The Ridge Runners had come so close. Despite the loss, Laura watched with pride as her girls embraced, then congratulated the winners. Parents and fans flooded the field, showering them with praise. During the awards ceremony, Laura accepted the second-place trophy to thunderous cheers. The tournament MVP went to a player from the winning team, but Kansas was awarded the sportsmanship trophy. She held it high, grinning as her teammates applauded. Afterward, Kansas hugged Jack. "Thanks for everything, Dad. Can I ride home with some teammates?" Jack checked with the parents before agreeing. As he watched the van pull away, he felt a light touch on his hand. "She's an amazing girl," Laura said softly. "You're doing a great job with her." Jack kept his eyes on the road ahead. "I have no clue how to raise a daughter. Women are a mystery. You've proven that." Laura winced but didn't let it show. "Jack, I was wrong," she admitted. "I have no excuse. You were right to leave. I'd like for us to talk without anger." Jack exhaled. "You're right. No point in rehashing the past. You've done a great job coaching. Kansas respects you. She knows you could have made things hard for her, but you didn't." Laura's expression softened. "I may have been a fool when we got married, but I was never cruel. I care about Kansas. I'd love to stay in her life. But if you think I'm a bad influence, I'll step back." Jack shook his head. "I'd like you to be part of her life. She needs strong role models." Laura gave him a skeptical look. "You know I'm far from perfect." Jack smirked. "Everyone I talk to says otherwise." She arched a brow. "Since you came back, maybe. But we both know I gave people plenty of reasons to think differently before you left." Jack noticed her parents watching from a distance, their expressions tight with disapproval. "They look like they swallowed lemons," he muttered. Laura sighed. "They blame you. They're good people. I wish you'd never told them the truth. Wouldn't have changed anything." Laura hesitated. "Have a safe trip, Jack. Thanks for talking to me. I finally made peace with everything." Jack nodded. For the first time, they had spoken without bitterness. That, to Laura, felt like a victory. At dinner, Laura wasn't surprised when her mother pressed her for details. "So," Brenda asked, setting down her fork, "what did you and Jack talk about?" "Family," Laura said, stirring her mashed potatoes. "I told him he's raising a wonderful daughter. He downplayed it. He also said I have great parents." Janet scoffed. Before or after, he caught us glaring at him. "After," Laura admitted with a smirk. "He's not stupid. He knows why you don't like him. He actually respects it." Her father grumbled. "Shame he wasn't that honorable about his marriage." 3 days later, Laura sat at the dinner table, drained. Kate noticed immediately. "What's wrong? You look like hell." "Sarah Jefferson talked to me after practice," Laura said, rubbing her forehead. "Her Uncle Rick has a friend in Jack's old county. Turns out, when Jack adopted Kansas, he listed himself as married to me. Apparently, single men have a hard time adopting teenage girls. Rick was still mad about the tournament and reported him. Now there's an investigation, and Jack could lose Kansas." The table fell silent. "Sarah said Kansas cried when she found out," Laura added. "I know Jack. He'll run before he lets them take her." "He's good at running from problems," her father muttered. Laura barely heard him. "He's not giving her up. I know him." Kate suddenly sat up. "Laura, you're still married to him." Laura's head snapped up. "What?" "He thought you divorced him. You thought he divorced you? But neither of you actually did. You're still as married as the day you left the church." Brenda waved dismissively. "What difference does it make? He's still living as a single man," Kate smirked. "Laura, call Jack. If he and Kansas move in with you, they'll match exactly what he told the court. Problem solved." "I won't allow it," Brenda said. "You don't know who he is anymore. He could be dangerous." Laura shook her head. "Jack isn't like that. He'd never hurt me. I'm going to him." At Jack's house, Kansas curled in his lap, sobbing. His mother, Janet, wrung her hands as the doorbell rang. Janet answered to find Laura. "Can I talk to you in Kansas?" Jack didn't look up. "Not a good time, Laura. We're packing." "You don't have to leave," Laura said softly. Jack exhaled. "This isn't your problem. She's my daughter, too." Kansas lifted her tear-streaked face. Janet gasped. Jack's voice hardened. "If you try to take her, you're in for a fight." "I'm still your wife," Laura said. "Legally, I'm her mother. I'm probably on the paperwork." Janet's eyes widened. "If you move in with Laura, it fixes everything," Jack scoffed. "And when she decides she's done with us?" Laura's patience snapped. "Jack, I made one mistake, and I've paid for it every day since. I won't do that to you again. If it helps, I'll put your name on my house deed." She turned to Kansas, her voice softening. "I love you like a daughter. I'd be honored to be your mom." Kansas hesitated, then turned to Jack. "Dad, can we try, please?" Jack rubbed his eyes, weighing his options. Laura folded her arms. "What's your plan? Flee the country? That's not realistic. This is." Jack sighed heavily. "Fine," Kansas squealed, hugging Laura. Jack rubbed his temples. "I feel like I've lost control." Jack frowned as he looked at Laura's small ranch house. 2 bedrooms? How's this supposed to work? Kansas grinned. "Easy math. 2 people share. 1 gets their own." "I'm not sharing with you, Kansas," Jack said flatly. "Obviously not," she replied. "I'm a teenage girl. I need my own space. But you and Laura are married. Sharing shouldn't be a problem." "We're faking a family, not sleeping arrangements," Jack countered. "Sleeping?" Kansas teased. "Just sleeping. Still part of the act." Laura sighed. "Am I invisible here?" Kansas smirked. "I get my own room. You 2 share. Mom even promised you closet space." By 11 that night, Jack and Kansas had officially moved in. Before bed, Kansas hesitated. "Is it okay if I call you Mom? It'll seem more natural if anyone checks in." Laura's throat tightened. "Honey, nothing would make me happier," Kansas beamed. "What about at school?" "You've called me coach all year. No need to change that now," Jack advised. "We need to look like a family, not like we suddenly became one overnight." Kansas nodded. "Fair enough. But I'm the only one going home with Mom after practice, helping her cook and clean. I finally have a real family." Jack almost warned her not to get carried away, but Laura caught his eye and shook her head slightly. He got the message. That night, Jack emerged from the bathroom, hesitating before getting into bed. "You wear pajamas now," Laura noted. "You used to sleep without clothes." Jack shrugged. "Kansas lives with me. I make an effort." Laura smirked. "I won't call the cops if you forget and put an arm around me in your sleep." Jack sighed. "Not a problem." He rolled onto his back and was asleep in minutes. Jack always woke early. At 5, he opened his eyes. He was still on his side of the bed, undisturbed. After soccer practice that evening, Laura took Kansas to visit her parents. As soon as they walked in, Kansas stood in front of Brenda. "Your daughter is my mom now. Can I call you Grandma?" Brenda had planned to disapprove of the whole arrangement, but at those words, her resistance crumbled. "Of course you can," she said, pulling Kansas into a hug. "Would you like some cookies? I just made some." Kate walked in, grinning. "Mom's heart has officially melted. I'm Aunt Kate, by the way, and you are now my favorite niece." Kansas beamed. "New grandma, new aunt. This deal keeps getting better. Hopefully we can spend more time together," she added. "Dad knows Grandma isn't his biggest fan, so we'll probably visit when he's working." "Well, I happen to like your dad," Kate teased. "He's a good-looking guy." Kansas raised an eyebrow. "And how do he and Mom get along?" Kate shrugged. "They set rules for sharing a room. Pretty sure that's not standard family behavior." Kansas smirked. "Daddy's a red-blooded man, and Mom looks like a mannequin. But curvier, he doesn't stand a chance." Laura blushed. "Okay, that's enough." Brenda narrowed her eyes. "You're not thinking about getting back together, are you?" "Mom, I stopped by for recipes, not a lecture," Laura replied. "And no, Jack barely tolerates me, so you can rest easy." Jack arrived home shortly after they started dinner. He barely said a word before heading outside with a notebook and a measuring tape. Once they finished eating, Jack laid his plan on the table. "Laura, I want to add on to the house. A 26 by 14-foot extension. Big bedroom, private bath, walk-in closet, plus a guest half bath. Want to see my design?" Laura's eyes widened. "That sounds great, but I can't afford it. I've barely managed my mortgage as it is." "I'll cover it," Jack said. "You're making a huge sacrifice for Kansas and me. It'll add value to your home and give us more space." Laura folded her arms. "Sleeping next to me, is that unbearable?" Jack sighed. It's not that. This will make things more comfortable. We'll still use the master bedroom, just with more space. Laura leaned back. Fine, but on one condition, you sleep in the same bed the whole time we live together. Agree or forget it. Jack glanced at Kansas, who was barely holding in laughter. He sighed. Deal. As soccer season wrapped up, Jack overheard Laura talking to Kansas about volleyball. By the end of the conversation, Kansas had joined the team. Jack noticed how close they'd grown. They joked, cooked together, went shopping, and trained side by side. Kansas was as happy as Jack had ever seen her. His relationship with Laura was more complicated. She respected his space, but was never cold or distant. She never complained about the construction or the chaos in her house. Within a week, Jack had a backhoe digging up the yard. The mild climate meant they could keep building well into the fall, and by Christmas, the addition would be complete. Laura and Kansas were thrilled. Kansas would get Laura's old room, complete with her own bathroom and closet. Jack and Laura planned for any possible adoption inquiries. At first, they prepared for officials to come knocking, but as time passed, they began to wonder if the whole thing had been overblown. The sleeping arrangements never changed. Both wore pajamas. Jack no longer worried about waking up too close to Laura or finding himself in an awkward position. One night, as he lay thinking about the next phase of the construction, he felt Laura tense beside him. Then, to his surprise, she reached out, resting her hand on his chest with a contented sigh before drifting into a deep sleep. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Laura and Kansas pulled into the driveway to find Jack talking to a blonde woman. Laura recognized her immediately, Beth Harding. Jack came inside a few minutes later, his expression unreadable. Kansas had gone to her room, leaving them alone. That was Beth Harding, he said casually, watching Laura's reaction. Laura stiffened, gripping the kitchen counter. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What did she want? Was she angry? Jack exhaled. Her husband, Chuck, has a brain tumor. He's dying. She asked if I'd visit him. Laura spun to face him, her expression stricken. Don't do it. He just wants to gloat to hurt you. Please, Jack. Don't let him. I told her I would. Jack's voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. Even if it's just to watch him die. He'll tell you I was easy, Laura whispered, her voice breaking. That he didn't even have to try. That it wasn't just that night. He'll laugh in your face. She swallowed hard. He's cruel, Jack. I was stupid, but a real man wouldn't have gone after a married woman. Jack's jaw tightened. Then why did you let him? Laura's breath caught. I don't know, she admitted, hugging herself. He was the campus star, the senior soccer player everyone admired. And I was just someone's wife, off limits to most men, but not to him. He was charming, and I was foolish enough to think I could handle it, that you'd never know. She wiped at her eyes. It was the only time, but one time was enough to ruin everything. Jack's gaze was hard. You didn't seem like a woman full of regret that night, Laura. You were saying his name like he was the best thing that ever happened to you. His voice was steady but cold. I thought about eliminating you both. Instead, I just walked out the back door and drove away. Tears streamed down Laura's face. I never blamed you for leaving. The moment I saw your ring on the table, I knew I'd destroyed us. She took a shaky breath. I love Kansas, but we're not a real family. You and I will never have that love again, and that's my fault. I live with it every day. Jack's voice dropped. Why didn't you just tell me you weren't happy? I was happy, she whispered. I didn't want other men. I just wanted to feel special. And for one night, the high school golden boy wanted me. She let out a bitter laugh. The irony? After you left, I finally grew up, and you became even better. Kinder, stronger, more devoted. You became the man I should have never lost. She exhaled shakily. Believe it or not, that was the last time I had sex. She met his gaze. You're the only man who ever made love to me. That night with him? It wasn't love. Now, I know the difference. Jack's eyes darkened. I rushed home from that seminar to surprise you, to spend the night with my wife. Instead, I walked in on that. You nearly eliminated me, Laura, and an apology doesn't erase 6 years of pain. I know, she whispered. I don't expect forgiveness. You're not the kind of man who forgets betrayal. She blinked back, fresh tears. Every time I look at you in Kansas, I'm reminded of how stupid I was, and the pain hasn't faded. It's gotten worse, because my love for both of you has only grown. Jack didn't speak. Laura forced a smile. Every night I lie next to you and hope, just once, you'll touch me. That you'll hold me, kiss me, But you never do. She let out a sad laugh. It's not even hard for you to resist me, is it? Jack said nothing. Karma's a witch, Laura murmured. In early December, Jack walked into the hospital and asked for Chuck Harding. He wasn't prepared for what he saw. Chuck was skeletal, his skin stretched thin over his bones, his eyes sunken. He barely looked alive. "Jack," Chuck rasped, forcing a weak smile. "If you want to hit me, go ahead. I deserve it." Jack crossed his arms. "I just came to tell you how much I enjoy watching you die." Chuck let out a wheezing chuckle. "That's why I asked you here. I thought my suffering might make you feel better." Jack narrowed his eyes. "Cut the crap. What do you really want?" Chuck's expression sobered. "I spent most of my life being an a-hole. You caught me in bed with your wife, and you didn't eliminate me. I saw your rifle downstairs that night. Laura just saw the ring on the table." He exhaled shakily. "I've never seen a woman look more devastated than she did that night." Jack clenched his jaw. "I owe you," Chuck continued, his voice weaker. "But I have no way to pay you back. My life's over. The only thing I can offer is letting you watch me die. If that helps you, then take it." Jack scoffed. "And your wife's okay with that?" "She understands." Chuck's voice cracked. "She knows I want to do something. Anything to ease my conscience. Dying won't fix what I did. But maybe if it gives you some peace, it's worth something." He smirked faintly. "Just don't clap when the Grim Reaper shows up." It upset Beth. Jack's jaw tightened. "Why did you do it, Chuck? You had women throwing themselves at you." "Why my wife?" Chuck exhaled. "Because I could." Jack's fists clenched. "That's it? That's the reason?" Chuck let out a ragged breath. "I didn't care about you, or your marriage, or Laura. She was just another conquest." His voice cracked. "It wasn't until I met Beth that I realized how worthless I was." Jack's expression darkened. "You ruined my life." "For what?" Chuck's voice was barely a whisper. "Nothing. It meant nothing." Jack's fists shook. "If you weren't already dying, I'd eliminate you myself." "If I weren't dying, I'd let you." Chuck's weak smile faded. "I deserve worse." Jack inhaled sharply, his whole body tense. "I should smother you with this pillow." Chuck gave a wheezing laugh. "You could, but you'd go to prison and I'd still be dead." Jack stared at him for a long moment. "Come back anytime," Chuck murmured. "Maybe you'll get to see me go." Jack turned on his heel and stalked out of the room. For the next several weeks, he visited Chuck regularly. He never told Laura or Kansas. On his third visit, Beth was there with a little boy. Jack barely nodded to her before turning and walking out. Even as much as he hated Chuck Harding, he couldn't take pleasure in watching a dying man suffer in front of his wife and child, but he still came back. Chuck Harding deserved every second of it. The next time Jack visited, Chuck was quieter, his usual bravado replaced by something more reflective. "You left last time because my wife and kid were here, didn't you?" Chuck's voice was weak but sharp. "Hard to enjoy watching me suffer when you see the people it actually hurts, huh?" Jack crossed his arms. "I'm here for you, not them," he said coolly, though he couldn't ignore how hollow the words felt. Chuck talked about his son, his favorite books, his quirks, his dreams. Then he spoke about Beth, how she changed him, how she made him a better man. Jack knew what he was doing, trying to humanize himself to earn some sympathy. It wasn't going to work. On Christmas Eve, Jack visited again. Chuck looked worse than ever, frail, barely holding on. This time, Jack had something to say. "I hate what you did," Jack said evenly, "but I can't keep hating you. The best revenge isn't watching you die, it's living well. So here's what's going to happen. I'll make sure Beth and Charlie never need anything. You'll leave this world knowing that the man you screwed over is the one taking care of your family." Chuck let out a weak chuckle. "I get why you think that's revenge," he murmured. "You're really bad at it, though." Jack's jaw tightened. "I regret what I did to you and Laura," Chuck admitted, his voice raspier. "Funny how one horrible thing ended up securing my family's future. Ironic, isn't it?" Jack exhaled. "It's the best I could come up with." Chuck studied him. "You won't be back, will you?" Jack shook his head. "No, I don't need to see you die. There's no satisfaction in it." Chuck gave him a faint smile. "You realize that's basically forgiveness, right?" Jack's fists clenched. "Think whatever you want. I don't care." Chuck's voice softened even more. "You can forgive me, the man who destroyed your life, but not Laura, the woman who still loves you. Why?" Jack's chest tightened. Imagine how good it felt to let go of your hate for me, Chuck continued. Now imagine how good it'll feel if you forgive her. You could have your family back, Jack. You could be happy, but instead, you're punishing her. Jack's jaw clenched. Screw you, Harding. You're the one who said I forgave you. I never did. Chuck smirked. Not in words, but you did, he exhaled, his voice barely a whisper. If I don't see you again, tell Laura I'm sorry. Jack walked out furious. That smug idiot thought he'd been forgiven. Worse, he had the nerve to suggest Jack should forgive Laura. That was never going to happen. As he drove home, Chuck's words echoed in his mind. Damn it, he never should have visited. When he reached his street, his driveway was packed with cars. That's when he remembered. The Christmas party. Kansas and Laura had planned it for weeks. The house addition had been completed 2 days ago, and the new furniture, including the ridiculously large bed Laura had insisted on, was moved in yesterday. Jack was still fuming when he walked inside. The room fell silent. Laura and Kansas were serving drinks, chatting with guests. But as soon as they saw Jack, something shifted. Kansas, ever perceptive, muttered, "Uh-oh." She'd never seen that look on her father's face before. Jack's gaze locked onto Laura. He stopped moving. Laura set down her tray, her voice cautious. "What's wrong, Jack?" Jack's voice was steady but thick with emotion. "Do you really want to be my wife?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Laura's breath hitched. "Yes," she answered softly but firmly. Jack took a step forward. "A wife belongs to her husband, only to him." Kate grabbed her father's arm before he could step in, silently telling him to stay out of it. Laura nodded. "I agree. A husband provides for his family, protects them. He deserves respect." "Yes," she whispered. Jack's voice dropped lower. "And a good wife doesn't complain when her husband takes her whenever he needs her." He paused. "Including right now. On that damn bed you picked out." The room went dead silent. Then, to everyone's shock, Laura whispered, "Not if he loves her, and she loves him." Jack's eyes darkened with something fierce. "Right," he said roughly, then without another word, scooped her into his arms. "Kansas, close the door behind us." "Sure thing, Dad," Kansas replied cheerfully, shutting the bedroom door. She turned to the stunned guest with a grin. "So, who wants more eggnog?" Laura's mother blinked. "Did that just happen? Is she okay?" Kate smirked. "Oh, she's better than okay. She's finally happy." 30 minutes later, Jack and Laura emerged, freshly showered, dressed in new clothes. Laura was glowing, curled against Jack's side, smiling softly. One of Jack's crew members chuckled. "That was quick. Hope the boss got the job done." Laura grinned. "He did very well. Thanks for asking." She kissed Jack's cheek. Jack shook his head, amused. Then he spotted Laura's father approaching. "I don't know what just happened," her father said gruffly, "but her mother and I are glad things are better." He held out a hand. "Just don't screw it up again." Jack shook it firmly. "Not a chance." He glanced at Laura. "We're not letting go of this again." Kate crossed her arms, smug. "You do realize it was my idea for you two to move in together for Kansas's adoption, right?" "Funny how nothing ever came of that investigation," she added. Kansas giggled. "Oh, it happened. A social worker came to my school. I told them I had the best family ever, that my parents loved me and each other. I just left out the part about how long they'd been acting like a family." She shrugged. "I figured you two would catch up eventually." Jack's mother, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. "Jack, why were you so emotional when you got home?" Jack exhaled, his fingers gently tracing circles on Laura's back. "I spent 6 years trying to hurt someone, and in the end, the only one suffering was me." He pulled Laura closer. "I finally realized revenge doesn't heal anything. Love does." Laura smiled up at him. "So I'm stuck with you forever?" Jack kissed her forehead. "Afraid so." The room erupted in cheers and laughter. The past was behind them, and their future had just begun. By late afternoon, everything fell apart. The day had started with the usual grind: wake up, get the kids ready, kiss them goodbye, head to my construction foreman job. Nothing remarkable. Payday meant a stop at the ATM, except the machine swallowed my card without a word. No cash, no card, no help. Maddie's birthday was Sunday, and now even the gift money was gone. Frustrated, I drove home. But something felt wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway. Tracy's car was gone. My stomach tightened. She knew better than to leave the kids alone in the house again. I reached the door, and before I could turn the key, a stranger's voice called my name. "Mr. David Brown?" I turned to find a middle-aged man handing me a yellow envelope. "You've been served," he said and walked off. I stood there, stunned, then went inside to a house that felt eerily hollow. It didn't take long to confirm why. It was empty. Completely. Every trace of my wife and kids, gone. No goodbye, no note, no message, just silence. And that damn envelope. Inside were legal documents that shattered my world. A divorce petition, a notice to vacate and sell the house within 2 months, a request from some man, Michael Smith, to adopt my children, and a restraining order keeping me 200 yards away from everyone I loved. The shock was paralyzing. My life had been gutted in one coordinated strike, and I hadn't seen it coming. Tracy, the woman I thought I knew, had vanished, taking our kids, closing our accounts, gutting our future, and replaced herself with some faceless man I'd never even heard of. Michael Smith. The name rang a faint bell. TV ads? Supermarket owner? Yeah, some flashy guy who'd hijacked a grocery chain a couple years back. Now he was hijacking my family. My mind reeled. 6 months ago, Tracy had started acting distant. Then suddenly, things between us got better, much better. She became someone else, bold, uninhibited. I thought it was a spark reignited. Now I realized it wasn't me that brought her to life. It was him. The worst part? I hadn't seen a single red flag. I thought she'd changed for me. Truth is, she'd stopped respecting me long ago, and I was too blind to notice, and yet, somehow I didn't fall apart. Not yet. Something in me clicked. The numbness shifted into resolve. I needed answers, and I needed a plan. I was never one to follow rules to the letter. My boss once joked, "Dave doesn't follow the manual. He writes it." That rebellious streak was about to be my greatest tool. 30 minutes later, I was parked just shy of 200 feet from 12 Riverview Drive. Tracy's car sat in the driveway like it belonged there. I stared at the house. Big, lavish, just like every other house on that upscale street. And then it hit me. Michael Smith was the guy from those smug commercials. Only this time, his face wasn't just on my screen. He was in my life. And he declared war. I was still parked outside the house, caught in my thoughts, when the front door opened and a man stepped out. I recognized him instantly. It was the same guy who'd served me earlier with that damned envelope. He got in his car and drove off. That was the push I needed to finally open the papers he handed me. Tracy hadn't just left me. She was going for the jugular, demanding the house, the car, alimony, child support, every cent we had, and worst of all, full custody. I wouldn't even get to see my kids. That was Tracy for you. It was never enough to win. She had to completely annihilate whoever stood in her way. I was still reeling when the door opened again. A woman in a tailored coat stood outside, suitcase at her side. A man, likely her husband, dropped the bag next to her and closed the door without a word. She stood there, frozen, gripping a yellow envelope, the same kind as mine. When she started walking, her face mirrored mine, shocked, hollow. As she passed my car, I stepped out and held up my envelope. Click. She looked at mine, then at hers, and then she just broke down in tears. I quietly loaded her suitcase into my trunk and opened the door. We didn't say a word as I drove around the block a few times, avoiding attention. Somehow, having her beside me, just as blindsided and broken, snapped me out of my fog. She was still beautiful, even through red, tear-filled eyes. But I could tell she wasn't in any shape to lead the conversation, so I did. "I'm Dave," I said gently. "I think your husband met my wife." She looked up at me with a sad, tired smile. "I'm Wendy, your wife. Is she Tracy?" I nodded. "I found them in bed together last month," she said, then started crying again. I waited silently, letting her grieve. Oddly, hearing confirmation of Tracy's affair didn't hit me as hard as I expected. Maybe I'd already run out of shock. "Do you have anyone I can take you to?" She shook her head. "No family here, and thanks to Michael, no friends left either." "Have you eaten?" She shook her head again. I checked my wallet, barely $50. I took her to a cheap local diner I trusted. Over dinner, we traded life stories. I was 32, married young, dropped out of college when Tracy got pregnant. She was against pregnancy termination, so I quit school to support us. She never worked, and I tried to believe we had a solid marriage, though I quietly resented how lazy she'd become. Publicly, she played the doting mom. Privately, she was self-absorbed. I kept quiet for the kids' sake. They were all I had left. No siblings, no parents, just them. Wendy was 41, raised by a single father after her mom left. Her dad died young from stress. She married Michael, a much older man, and they never had kids. He refused to get tested, blamed her, and burned through her inheritance, expanding his business. I suggested she try the ATM outside, just to confirm her cards had been shut down too. No surprise, they had. It was a well-executed ambush. We were blindsided, broke, and overwhelmed. But at least we weren't alone. Back at my place, I offered her the guest room. Just a safe space, nothing more. She accepted. We opened a bottle of wine and sat at the table. Two strangers, bound by shared betrayal. At one point, when I spoke about my fear of losing access to my kids, she gently placed her hand over mine. When I choked up, she cried for me, something I couldn't do for myself. It felt less like a conversation and more like mutual therapy. By the time the bottle was empty, we both understood something important. This wasn't just a fight, it was a war. Our exes had cut us off from everything to prevent us from defending ourselves. But if we stuck together, we might just stand a chance. And for the first time since it all fell apart, I didn't feel completely alone. The next day, Wendy and I tried to keep each other sane. Whenever one of us began to spiral, the other would crack a joke, share a story, or just sit in silence. It wasn't normal, but it worked. Despite everything, we laughed a lot. She was stunning, but surprisingly reserved, even shy. I didn't press. With both our finances gutted, we scraped together what little cash we had and stretched it. Thrift stores, coupons, leftovers. We embraced our new reality like two broke college kids. For Wendy, who'd lived comfortably for years, it was a crash course in survival, but somehow, we made it work. At one point, we tried talking about the future, but the conversation fizzled. Too raw, too soon. That night, we watched a movie instead and didn't speak much. Sunday morning brought the unexpected. Tracy's father, John, and her younger sister, Beth, showed up. I invited them in for coffee. I'd always liked them, and I had a hunch Beth had always liked me too. She'd been single since her husband ditched her for his secretary. As I brewed the coffee, Wendy wandered into the kitchen in her bathrobe. She looked startled, immediately apologizing. John didn't hide his suspicion. Before he could say anything stupid, I cut in. Just so you know, this is the wife of the guy your daughter ran off with. He threw her out Friday. I offered her a place to stay. She's not the only one your daughter tried to destroy. John looked embarrassed. Dave, I'm sorry. Tracy's mother wanted to come, but she's too ashamed. We know what Tracy did. I'm furious with her, but it's complicated. You know, grandkids and... I get it, I said. But what I don't get is why she's doing this. I understand the money grab, the custody ploy, but what's the motive? The look on John's face told me he had no idea how far this had gone. She took everything? He asked, stunned. Everything. The accounts are drained. She served me an eviction notice and banned me from seeing the kids. His eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. Jesus, I had no clue. He took a moment, then finally said, She told us yesterday. It's about money. She says you've hit your ceiling, and she wants more. She doesn't even like the guy, Smith, but she thinks marrying him will get her the lifestyle she wants. I don't think she'll stay with him. Once she's in, she'll gut him and move on. I have no idea how I raised someone like that. I laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from the man who supported her decision to keep the pregnancy that made me drop out of college. I'd be a licensed engineer right now if I'd stayed. John shrugged like it was ancient history. So why take the kids? I asked. We both know she's not exactly mother of the year. I don't know, Dave, he muttered. Beth gave her dad a look, but stayed quiet. They got up to leave. John shook my hand, and I asked him to hug Maddie for me. Beth gave me a tight hug and whispered, I'll be back in an hour. Not long after they left, a couple of mutual friends stopped by. They'd seen Tracy out at dinner with an older man and were confused. Wendy and I told them everything. They were appalled, not just by the betrayal, but by the fact Tracy had taken the kids. Apparently, she still put on the perfect mom act in public. We were still talking when one of Tracy's friends showed up. Same story, same outrage. That's when Beth returned. She pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. $1,000. Let's call it payback on behalf of my sister. I hesitated. It was hard to accept, but I needed it. I thanked her. And one more thing, she said. Dad didn't tell you everything. Tracy came to the house yesterday, picked up the kids, and spilled most of the plan. I got the rest out of her later. Smith wants to adopt your kids. He's childless and sees them as his legacy. Tracy promised him a baby after the wedding to seal the deal. But here's the kicker. She had a hysterectomy during her last C-section. He doesn't know. I just stared at Beth, stunned. The plan was twisted, but made a terrifying kind of sense. Smith wanted an heir. Tracy couldn't give him one. So she was offering my kids instead. If it wasn't so sick, it would have almost been clever. Beth's final revelation hit hard, but it made sense. Tracy's hysterectomy during her last C-section meant she physically couldn't give Smith the child she was promising him. And she'd hidden that from everyone, including him. It wasn't just manipulation. It was calculated deceit. What did she look like when she told you all this? I asked Beth. She tried to act cold, she said, but I could see it. Guilt. She knows what she did to you. She knows she broke a good man. But guilt won't stop her. I nodded, quietly absorbing it. Why are you helping me, Beth? Because it's the right thing. Tracy bullied me growing up, and now she's doing it to you. I've been abandoned before. I know how it feels. You were there for me when I fell apart. Tracy wasn't. So now I'm here for you. I tried to respond, but she cut me off. Relax. I'm not asking to sleep with you. That would be weird. I'm seeing someone, and it's serious. I laughed, surprised by how much I needed that. You've always been my favorite, I said. Thanks, Beth, she smiled. I'm your inside source now. Think of me as your personal spy. After she left, I rejoined Wendy and the others. Later that evening, I split $400 from Beth's gift, gave Wendy half, tucked the rest in a cookie jar. It would hold us over until payday. I told Wendy what Beth had uncovered. She wasn't shocked. Childlessness had always been a sore spot in her marriage. She looked at me and noticed how restless I got around this time of night. What is it about 8:30 that gets to you? She asked softly. That's when I used to read bedtime stories to my kids. Her eyes welled up. So, what are we going to do? My kids are my priority, I said. I won't leave them in the hands of manipulators. I need money, and I won't let Tracy and Smith walk away unpunished. I'm not sure how yet, but I'll figure it out. What about you? Wendy's whole expression changed. Her voice hardened. If Michael had just asked for a divorce and treated me fairly, I'd have let it go, but now I want to see him burn. The fire in her voice made it clear. We were past the point of forgiveness. I grinned at her determination. Well, I said, now we know what we want. Let's talk about how. We stayed up for hours, tossing around ideas. Most were legal. All were frustrating. There just wasn't a clean way to fight people who played dirty. Finally, I asked her more about Smith's finances. Turns out, 2 years ago, he'd leveraged his house, store, and boat to secure a $2.5 million expansion loan. That debt was his weak point. If we could disrupt his business, maybe we'd have enough leverage to negotiate access to my kids. Wendy was ready to torch the place metaphorically. Maybe literally, but I wasn't there. Even a snake like Smith didn't deserve to have his livelihood burned down. Still, the idea had merit. We went to bed way too late. Monday morning, I explained everything to my boss. To his credit, he was supportive, gave me a short leave, and even fronted me some vacation pay. I tried to focus on work, but the ache of missing my kids was constant. In the afternoons, I spent time with the legal counsel and finance officer at the local government office. People often look down on public sector jobs, but we stick together. We don't get rich, but we watch out for one another. And by the end of that week, I knew a whole lot more about legal loopholes, business finance, and how to play dirty without crossing the line. The morning started like any other, with Wendy and I sitting in the kitchen, going over the chaos of the previous day. She'd spent hours job hunting. She used to be an accounting assistant before giving it all up for marriage. Now she was cooking dinner in my kitchen, like we'd known each other forever. We were cleaning up when the phone rang. "Daddy, where are you? Daddy?" Maddie's tiny voice came through, cracking my heart wide open. "I'm here, baby, at home. I don't like it here. Please." Then I heard Tracy's voice. "Madeline, who are you talking to?" Click. The line went dead. I froze, fury rising in my chest. Wendy saw my face twist and asked what happened. I told her. She rushed to block the front door as I moved to leave. "Don't do it, Dave. That's exactly what they want. You show up and they call the cops for violating the restraining order." Her words cut through the rage. Instead of storming out, I climbed the stairs, locked myself in my room, and collapsed on the bed. A while later, there was a gentle knock. Wendy stepped in carrying 3 children's books. "Can you read me a story?" she asked softly. I stared at her, then at the books. Without a word, I made space on the bed. She curled beside me. I opened Maddie's favorite book and started reading aloud. By the end, the storm in my chest had calmed. I leaned over and kissed Wendy's forehead, just like I used to do with Maddie. She smiled. For weeks, I pushed all thoughts of my kids into the farthest corners of my mind. But the truth was crushing. I might lose them. They might grow up thinking I left. And then the doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was Sophia, Tracy's closest friend. She and I had always gotten along, but her sudden appearance caught me off guard. I let her in and introduced her to Wendy. Sophia barely made eye contact. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking. "Tracy told me everything months ago about the affair, the divorce, the custody. She made me promise not to say anything. That's why I disappeared." I said nothing. Honestly, I wanted her gone. But then I realized something. Guilt is powerful, and it can be useful. "It's okay, Sophia. I get it. You were in a tough spot." She looked up. "You know she emptied your accounts, right? Left me penniless, too." "Yeah, she mentioned it. Sounded proud. But I think it's a front. Deep down, she knows what she did is vile." Sophia held my gaze now, steady and direct. "For the record," she said, "I never believed what she said about you hitting the kids. I've seen you with them. I know you." "What don't I know?" I asked. "She told child services you were abusive. Said there wasn't enough evidence to charge you, but the accusation was enough to get the restraining order." I slumped into my chair, stunned. "She knows I've never laid a finger on them. I was more of a parent than her mom and dad ever were." They both watched me go pale with fury. Every muscle in my body burned with a new kind of anger, ice cold and absolute. If she wanted war, I'd stop fighting fair. "She'll do anything to win," I muttered, "and I won't just sit back and let it happen." Sophia nodded slowly. "I believe you, Dave. Like I said, I've seen real fathers. You're one of them. Tracy? She's running a game I don't want any part of." I filled her in on what we'd uncovered. That Tracy was planning to sell me out, let Smith adopt the kids, and lie about wanting to have a baby with him just to lock in his inheritance. She couldn't have kids anymore, but he didn't know that. "He's desperate for an heir," I said. "By the time he finds out the truth, she'll already have traded our house and savings for a chunk of his empire." Sophia looked horrified. "And what about me?" she asked quietly. "She used me, lied to me. You were her best friend, Sophia, and she let you believe I was abusing my children. What kind of friend is that?" She blinked hard, processing it all. Then without a word, she stood up, murmured an apology, and left. For a moment, I felt sorry for her, but mostly, I felt ready. I was on my way upstairs, ready to collapse under the weight of it all again, but Wendy stopped me. She pulled me into a silent hug. No words, just two broken people leaning on each other for warmth in a cold, unfair world. Eventually, I thanked her, and we settled in for the night. I barely slept. My brain spun between fury at Tracy's betrayal and the heartbreak from Maddie's voice on the phone. By 4 a.m., I'd stopped tossing and turning. A plan was already forming. Wendy woke me with sunlight and a smile. "Rise and shine, breakfast's ready." After showering, I called my boss and asked for time off. No hesitation, he approved it instantly. Across the kitchen table, Wendy raised an eyebrow. "So, how far are we going?" I smirked. "Let's just say I'm done playing fair." "Oh," she teased, flipping her hair. "Didn't know you cared that much." I grinned. "I'm thinking, take down his business, destroy her support system, crush both of them into dust. You know, a light touch." "I like the sound of that," she said. "I've got a few ideas myself." Over breakfast, we traded notes. Wendy dove into researching libel and slander laws while I made some calls. First to Tracy's mom, who was stunned to hear Tracy had armed child services without her knowledge. Then Beth, who was furious and ready to disown her sister. I convinced her to stay close to Tracy and become our inside woman instead. Wendy found everything she needed. In our country, the truth is a legal shield. As long as we stuck to facts, we were untouchable. We spent the next hour in my workshop painting bold messages on 2 signs. Half an hour later, we were sitting in lawn chairs outside Michael Smith's store, just off public property, in full compliance with local ordinances. Mine read, "Ask me how the owner of this store stole my wife and kids." Hers, "Ask me about my husband's morals." It didn't take long before Wendy's sign attracted more attention. Can't blame anyone. She was a beautiful woman with a tragic story. Once one person stopped, others followed. We stuck to facts, knowing that truth was our legal armor. And to our quiet delight, most people chose to shop elsewhere after hearing our stories. Around midday, the store manager came out and tried to intimidate us. Wendy recorded my calm response. "Want the police number? I'll dial for you." The cops arrived later, asked us to move back a bit to avoid blocking the entrance, and left us alone. Then, a local radio reporter stopped by. We told our story to a growing crowd. What caught their attention most was the part about Tracy accusing me of child mistreatment. Something so serious, most people assumed I wouldn't dare mention it if it weren't true. That evening, we stayed just long enough to wave goodbye to the closing staff and made sure they knew we'd be back. That night, our story made the local news. The footage was clean, factual, and powerful. Next morning, we returned to our posts. Security tried to block us from talking to customers, so this time I called the cops. They returned and politely reminded the manager we had the right to be there. A coffee vendor even set up nearby. It was turning into an event. Wendy played the role of abandoned wife perfectly. She had the look, the posture, even the trembling lower lip. If acting didn't work out, she could have led support groups. While we were distracted by a news van across the street, two men in suits appeared and handed us a cease and desist order. They claimed we were costing the store $30,000 a day. The moment was caught entirely on video. The lawsuit threat vanished quickly once reporters started asking questions. We repeated our mantra: no exaggeration, no drama, just the facts. I stood there holding a letter from Tracy's legal firm. On the surface, it looked threatening. But to the public, it made us look like David standing up to Goliath. As we walked away that evening, the store already shuttered. We saw dozens of people still lingering, waiting for tomorrow's chapter. I joked to Wendy that she should get an agent, but when the news aired, the mood shifted. The cameras had captured our children being hustled away from Smith's mansion after school. Seeing Maddie and James pulled out of sight like they were evidence being hidden, it tore me up inside. That night, I read Wendy another bedtime story. We both needed it. The phone calls started pouring in, 10 or more a day, from friends and acquaintances. Most had caught wind of Tracy's stunt and wanted us to know they stood with us. I thanked them. Their words helped, even as they added weight to the realization. Tracy had become the most hated woman in town, and somehow, it still didn't feel like enough. At 9:30 that night, there was a knock at the door. It was Sophia. She didn't speak, just hugged me tightly, pressed a memory card into my hand, and walked away in tears. Wendy and I immediately plugged it into the computer. What played was explosive, a recording of Sophia confronting Tracy, who confessed, on tape, to lying to child services and manipulating everyone around her. She tried to justify her actions, but in the end, Sophia cut ties with her completely. The recording was gold emotionally, but legally, not so much. We debated anonymously sending it to the media, but it could get Sophia into trouble. As much as we wanted to fight dirty, we still had limits. The next day brought fresh drama, served papers, hand-delivered by none other than Reginald Pike himself. He tried to hit Wendy and me with lawsuits simultaneously, but we took turns filming the whole thing for the record. Sued for tens of thousands by people who knew we had nothing. Pathetic. Despite that, the store looked like a ghost town. Word had clearly spread. Other local businesses were quietly luring customers away. The vultures were circling. We kept filming. Every truck that rolled in was caught on camera, especially the delivery company logos. Maybe they'd reconsider who they did business with. At 2 p.m., 2 employees stepped out and told us layoffs were coming. Wendy interviewed me on the spot, asking other companies to consider hiring the displaced workers. That video went viral by 3:30. Then the state news van rolled up again. 3 men in suits, sans ties, stepped out and announced on camera that they were attorneys offering to represent us pro bono. Wait, I said, that's what pro bono means? Their lead, Brian Colson, explained he was a former partner of Pike and Slugden, the very firm coming after us. Apparently, they'd burned him years ago. Now it was payback. We met at the cafe across the street. By the end of the night, and 15 cups of coffee, we'd signed paperwork. They would represent us in our divorces and in my custody battle. Colson lit up when we mentioned Sophia's recording, but we didn't hand it over, at least not yet. We were cautious. Still, our story had become regular content in the human interest segments of the nightly news. Colson, in his open-collar shirt, looked sharp on TV. Honestly, the dynamic reminded me of a remora and a shark. If Colson wanted to be the shark, that was fine. He fought for us like one. Over the next week and a half, the media attention only grew. My longing for my kids, and Wendy deepened. Meanwhile, Coulson pushed hard to get us temporary court orders, access to our assets, a motion for Tracy to bring the kids in for supervised visits, and possibly even to vacate the house. Australians love an underdog, and it showed. The public backed us. I think the local news anchor had a soft spot for Wendy too, which didn't hurt. By the end of that week, we had court dates, mine first, Wendy's immediately after. As we prepared, I realized Coulson had a ruthless streak, and I respected it. On Thursday, we paused our protests. But when we heard customers were sneaking back into the store, we returned Friday morning. Good thing we did. At 9 a.m., Michael Smith himself pulled into the parking lot, tailed by highway patrol. Flashy car, custom plates, not the best look. It took officers a few minutes to find something questionable, but they did. I gave them a cheerful wave as they drove off. Wendy caught Smith entering the store on camera, which proved he initiated contact, potentially violating the restraining order. We had him. An hour later, 2 bankers showed up. "Today's the 24th, right?" Wendy asked. "All day," I said with a grin. "Loan payment day." That night, we kept it simple. My vacation pay had hit our new account, so we celebrated modestly, with a movie instead of our usual quiet night in. Sleep didn't come easily that weekend. Monday's hearing would decide the future of my family. But Saturday brought an unexpected and welcome distraction. An old friend of Wendy's, who had seen our story and tracked her down. Late that afternoon, Tracy's parents and sister Beth stopped by. Wendy kept them entertained while I made a quick store run. She was a natural host, and from what I saw when I returned, the mood was surprisingly upbeat. I couldn't help but wonder why Tracy's family was suddenly warming back up to me. Maybe they'd finally pieced together the truth. Maybe they realized I had the moral high ground, and that siding with me meant staying in their grandkids' lives. While the barbecue sizzled, Beth pulled me aside. "How's your back, Dave?" I gave her a puzzled look. "It's fine." "No stabbing pain where my sister shoved the metaphorical knife?" I laughed. "So Tracy's not thrilled?" "Thrilled? Dave, she's losing her mind. You're not following her script. She expected you to grovel. Instead, you're out there publicly exposing everything. You've caught them off guard. Mom and Dad won't even talk to her, and Sophia jumped ship. Tracy and Mick are apparently scared to show their faces in public. Even the country club's buzzing." "Touching," I said dryly. "How are the kids?" "They're okay, sad, confused. I visit every couple of days and try to lift their spirits. Here, look." Beth showed me photos on her camera. Only one caught Maddie smiling, and even then it looked forced. My throat tightened. I thanked Beth for everything, and as we rejoined the others, she theatrically dropped a set of keys. "Oops," she said. "Looks like I dropped the Mercedes keys and the house spare." Clumsy me. We shared a grin. The next morning, I was still groggy when Wendy's voice echoed down the hall. At 10 a.m., Wendy and I headed to court. It was my first official hearing, and the first time I laid eyes on Mick. Middle-aged, balding, with a gut that had clearly arrived years before he did. Wendy stiffened beside me as he entered. Later, she told me he looked nothing like the man she had once fallen for. Tracy's legal team didn't show up themselves. Instead, they sent a junior associate. Coulson smirked. Apparently, they knew each other from years back, but both men played their roles professionally. Coulson laid out our financial argument first. The opposition claimed Tracy needed full access to our assets to support the kids. When Coulson filed for joint custody and requested the children be interviewed by Child Services, they pushed back hard. Then Mick leaned over to Tracy. She'd spent most of the morning shooting daggers at me. They whispered. A moment later, Coulson leaned in. "She wants to make a deal," he said. "She's threatening to go public with accusations of mistreatment. If you give up the kids, she'll walk away from everything else. The house, the money." I looked over. Tracy was smirking like she had already won. Then I turned to Wendy. She gave me a quiet nod, steady and strong. I pulled out a tape recorder from my jacket. Sophia had given me permission to use it if Tracy crossed the line, and this was it. Coulson took it, played a short clip for the other lawyer. I watched the blood drain from his face. Words were exchanged. Tension flared. Unacceptable. Media exposure. I caught fragments as he stormed out. 10 minutes later, he returned and sat silently next to Tracy. The judge was called back. Then the impossible happened. "Your Honor," he said, "due to new evidence, we must withdraw from representing the defendant." Tracy looked stunned. The judge accepted the withdrawal, and adjourn the case. Tracy now had 2 weeks to find new counsel. He refused to rule on the financials until custody was addressed and left the restraining order in place, pending a proper hearing. Another 2 weeks without my children. Wendy's hearing came next. The media wasn't outside. They were busy reporting that a law firm had publicly dropped its client. That night, Slugden and Pike issued a press release talking about ethics and conscience. The press had a field day. But I didn't feel victorious. I missed my kids. Wendy started feeling the weight of it too. Guilty about living off my income, worried about burdening me. I reassured her I wouldn't have made it this far without her. The protest outside the store was starting to lose steam. Media interest was waning. I joked that by the end of the week I'd have to strip clothes to get a reporter's attention. Tuesday, I skipped picketing and just watched from a distance, tracking how many customers came and went. Sometimes silence says more than shouting. Right after lunch, I got a call from someone named Henry. He asked me to meet him at a coffee shop on the other side of town. Suspicious but curious, I asked Wendy to keep an eye from a distance, camera ready just in case. Henry turned out to be the assistant manager at Smith's store, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like he was meeting with a spy, and in a way, he was. He told me something unexpected. The bank was forcing Smith to sell the store. Fast. Cheap. Turns out, he was bleeding the place dry. Now the employees, Henry included, were secretly working with the bank to buy it out. You sitting outside actually helped, he said. Wendy and I happily resumed our post. Later that week, more good news arrived. Wendy handed our lawyers a packet of documents from an old investment tied to her inheritance. Turns out, she'd unknowingly bought into a business that reinvested profits, and it had quietly ballooned into a small fortune. By Saturday, the store was closed for the day. Overtime cuts. We hosted another barbecue. Beth, her parents, and Wendy's longtime friend came by. Beth gave us an update on the Smith household. Full-blown chaos. Tracy was paranoid, convinced Beth was spying for me. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't heard from the kids in over a week, which gnawed at me. Just as we finished eating, the doorbell rang. It was Tracy. I opened the door. "Aren't you breaking the order by being here?" She shrugged. "Apparently not if I come to you." I stepped aside. She froze when she saw her parents. Wendy glared at her and silently disappeared upstairs, where Beth had already gone. Even her own parents looked like they regretted raising her. Tracy pulled me into the kitchen. "For old time's sake, Dave, could you back off a little?" "Oh, didn't the trade work out like you hoped?" She exhaled sharply. "No, I figured if I cleaned you out, you'd cave and let Mick adopt the kids. Then I'd marry him, convince him I couldn't have kids, and take him for everything." She paused, then added, "I was going to come back to you once I had his money." I just stared. "But now?" she said. "His business is falling apart. We can't go anywhere without people staring. A woman spit on me at a restaurant. The cops pulled me over 3 times this week. I'm 1 ticket from losing my license." Her voice cracked. "Can't you just let me live my dream?" "You know history, right?" I said. "Pearl Harbor? That's what you did to this family. A sneak attack. If you'd just asked for a divorce like a normal human being, this could have ended peacefully. But you didn't. And now, I want full surrender." "You think I'd trade our kids for money?" "Didn't you?" I asked. She looked away, realizing her emotional tactics weren't working anymore. Her mask slipped, and the cold, calculating Tracy returned. "Mick wants to talk tonight. Can you meet?" "Oh, sure," I said. "Let me just stroll into your place and get arrested." "We could come here." "Nope." "Why not?" "Because if Smith steps foot on my property, I'll gladly rip his head off." That rattled her. "What did he ever do to you?" I ticked them off. "Seduced my wife, helped her drain our accounts, tried to erase me from my kids' lives. Pick one." She went quiet again. I could tell she wasn't expecting resistance anymore. "How about Skype?" I offered. "That might work." "What time?" "I'll check with my partner." She frowned. "What partner?" "Wendy. We decide things together." Tracy's mouth curled. "That old witch. Have you seen who you're sleeping with? She's loyal and she's had my back when I needed it. That makes her gold in my book." I went upstairs. Wendy didn't hesitate. "Let's do it," she said. "What do we have to lose?" Back downstairs, I told Tracy, 9 p.m. sharp. She gave her parents a bitter look before leaving, but just before she walked out, she glanced around the house one last time. I swear there were tears in her eyes. The party wound down around 8:30. I set up the laptop across the dining table for the call. Wendy chose to stay off camera. "If I never have to see Michael Smith again," she said. "It'll still be too soon." At exactly 9 p.m., I logged onto Skype. The screen lit up with Tracy and Mick sitting shoulder to shoulder, all faux composure and smugness. Wendy, fresh from the shower and wrapped in her robe, sat at the kitchen entrance, watching silently from the sidelines. No greetings, no small talk, just cold tension. It was immediately obvious they were playing power games, except their end goals didn't quite match. She wanted control, he wanted closure, and by the end, it was clear Mick was the one calling the shots. He leaned in first. "Let's talk straight, Brown. I don't care if I call you David or Mr. Brown. Just pick one and let's go." He expected submission. What he got was my unwavering stare. "I'll pick David. But if you want to keep talking, lose the arrogance." His eyes flicked to Tracy. "First point, mine." Then came his real offer. "You drop your protest at the store, maybe even say it was all a misunderstanding, and I'll sign the house back to you. Half the money, too. You'll get every other weekend with the kids. That's fair, right?" I didn't flinch. "What about Wendy?" he scoffed. "What does she matter now?" Tracy stayed quiet as Mick continued. "We'll toss her 10% of the business profits, once things recover." I glanced at Wendy. Her smirk said everything. "She declines your generous offer," I said, tilting my head toward the camera. "And as for your custody terms? Stuff them." Mick blinked. "Be reasonable. Once I have a kid of my own, I won't care about yours." Tracy's face shifted. Not in horror, just annoyance that he'd spilled the plan. "Right," I said. "So you want me to hand over my children to a man who sees them as temporary bargaining chips? Got it." Things escalated. "Still bitter I left you for a better man?" Tracy snapped. Mick stood behind her, placing a hand around her shoulder. Clearly rehearsed. They were trying to provoke me into losing it. Probably recording everything, hoping to use it later. Didn't work. Then I felt a soft hand on my shoulder and warm breath near my ear. "Don't turn around," Wendy whispered. "Just play along." She leaned in, kissed me softly, then looked at the screen with me. The timing was perfect. Tracy's eyes narrowed with a flicker of something between rage and realization. "Get your hands off my husband, you witch," I whispered back to Wendy. "Nice move." Was expecting a stunt, she said. Just not from her. Then she vanished, leaving me to face the screen again. I caught our small webcam feed. I didn't need to turn around. I saw it all. And for once, I didn't feel like the one losing ground. Tracy and Mick said something I barely registered. Then came a knock at the door. I answered it. It was my kids. They didn't say much. They didn't have to. Maddie clung to my leg. James wrapped his arms around my waist. They looked exhausted, starved, broken. I nearly lost it holding them. "Aunt Beth gave me a camera," James mumbled. Wendy arrived, and I asked her to keep our guests distracted on the call. Then I took the kids somewhere quiet. Bit by bit, I pieced together what happened. They'd snuck out in the middle of the night, walked here alone. James had captured a video of Tracy yelling at them during breakfast. Both were shaking from hunger and exhaustion. I gave them warm milk and sat them down. "You'll be safe here," I told them. "Wendy will stay with you." Back in the kitchen, I called Wendy in to watch the kids, then returned to the laptop. One look at my face and Tracy fell silent, but Mick couldn't help himself. "So where are the kids, Tracy?" "Upstairs, in bed." "No," I said. "They just walked through the dark to get here." The silence was thick. "They haven't eaten properly," I added. Tracy recovered first. "We'll come pick them up." "No, you won't. The day I leave them with either of you again is the day hell freezes over. And if either of you so much as step onto my street, I will do whatever it takes to keep you away from them." That was the reaction Mick had been fishing for. He grinned. "Thanks, man." Then the call cut. After the call ended, I double-checked that the entire Skype session had been recorded. Then I went to find the others. In the living room, Maddie was curled up in Wendy's lap, happily chatting about horses. James sat close by, watching her face like he was trying to memorize safety. I brought out leftover pizza and gently reminded them to eat slowly. I knew what had to be done next. I took the camera from James and copied its contents onto my laptop. I organized everything. Sophia's audio confession, the Skype video, the clip of Mick's careless remark, and a photo of the bruises on Maddie's wrists, into a single folder. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Before answering, I gave both kids a long hug and called Beth, asking her to come over. When I returned, Wendy was reading them a bedtime story. At 10:30 p.m., 2 daycare employees showed up at the door, both women, both cold and combative. They insisted they were there to take the children back to their mother. That wasn't going to happen. They pressed their authority, citing legal orders. I sat them down calmly and laid everything out, starting with Maddie's bruises and the explanation she gave, followed by James's account of going hungry. I then showed them video of Tracy screaming at them and the damning moment where Mick said, "Once I have my own baby, I won't care about yours." "Are you really going to send them back to that?" I asked. "After they walked through the dark just to escape?" They squirmed. "I'm sorry, sir," one of them said, "but we have to follow the order. There are allegations that you mistreated the children and your wife. If something happens while they're here, we're liable." I kept my voice even. "Let me be very clear. If you return these children to a place where there's evidence of mistreatment and something happens to them again, I will hold you personally responsible. Are you threatening us?" "Just painting you a picture." Before things escalated, I offered a compromise. Beth, their aunt, was on her way. I proposed she take temporary custody, neutral ground, so long as both sides agreed not to remove the kids from her care. The older woman left to make a call, presumably to Tracy, and returned with a nod. Agreed. I hugged the kids goodbye, promising I'd fix things. They trusted Beth, so they accepted the change quietly. Wendy didn't say a word as I disappeared for some time to sit with the weight of it all. The next morning, Wendy volunteered to help get the kids ready for school. That became her daily ritual, school drop-off and pick-up to and from Beth's. I returned to work, knowing our public protest had done its job. Henry later confirmed it. Business at the store had tanked, and his plan to buy it out was working. By Monday, we were back in court before the same judge. The financial side had already been settled. This time, it was all about custody. Wendy's case came first. Both sides laid out their version of her financial entanglement with Mick, especially the dividends he'd withheld. Mick clearly thought this part would stay buried. He looked like he might faint when it came to light. Their legal team was unimpressive, firm from out of town, barely competent. The judge ordered a forensic review of the unpaid dividends, but hinted that the asset split would favor Wendy, 65/35. He also made a pointed remark about punishing Mick for his behavior. Wendy made it clear she had no interest in the house. "It's his trophy, let him keep it." Then it was my turn. Their side, in a surprising move, submitted the Skype recording, clearly hoping my outburst would paint me as unstable. They played only the part where I'd threatened to keep the kids away from them. Tracy then took the stand and repeated her claims of mistreatment. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Beth and Sophia were called next. Their testimonies crushed whatever narrative Tracy had built. Beth spoke so powerfully that the judge had to double-check. "You're her sister?" Tracy looked blindsided and stormed out of the courtroom mid-session. When I finally took the stand, Coulson handled it perfectly. He started with the kids' midnight walk, then walked me through the hunger issue, hammering home the fact that neither parent in the other household had even noticed. He followed that up with child services interviews of the children. Because the opposition had introduced the Skype clip, they had no grounds to block the rest of it, especially the moment where Mick casually declared he'd stop caring once he had a biological child. Coulson then moved to introduce the video James had filmed. The other side objected. The judge's response was swift and sharp. "This isn't a criminal court," he said. "The standard here is the best interest of the children. I'll allow the video, and while it plays, Mr. Coulson, I'd also like to listen to that other tape, the one I've heard rumors about." The courtroom was dead silent when the audio played, Tracy yelling at her kids to make their own breakfast. But it was nothing compared to the bombshell that followed. A 10-minute recording of her admitting to Sophia that she'd lied to child services, fabricated claims that I was abusive. She even said it was Mick's idea. The judge didn't say a word during the final 4 minutes. He just stared at Tracy while she sat with her head in her hands. Mick looked just as stunned. Clearly, no one had told them why Slugden and Pike had walked away from their case. When the judge asked the opposing attorney if he had an explanation, the man just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a dying fish. Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Brown, can you explain the threat you made toward your ex-wife and her partner? I've also heard allegations about threatening behavior toward child services workers." I was ready. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, rising. "You've seen the evidence. My children were neglected, mistreated, and pulled from me under false claims. My job, no, my privilege, is to protect them. I'd risk my freedom, my reputation, anything to keep them safe. And yes, I made that threat. I'd do it again." The judge didn't scold me. In fact, I caught a flicker of approval in his eyes before he nodded and recessed. Less than an hour later, he returned with his ruling. Full custody was granted to me. Tracy's visitation rights would be entirely at my discretion. Coulson audibly exhaled. He'd never seen anything like it. The judge also awarded me the house and 65% of our liquid assets, citing Tracy's deceptive tactics as justification for the lopsided outcome. The press practically exploded. I don't remember what I said to the reporters outside. I was floating. Wendy took the kids home while I gathered their things from the mansion. Tracy and Mick shouted at each other the entire time. Back home, I collapsed on the couch with the kids. That night, they wanted Wendy to read them bedtime stories instead of me. Fair enough. I'd read each book so many times I could recite them in my sleep. The next night, we threw a party. Coulson and his team were the guests of honor. A couple of journalists showed up, and I overheard Coulson casually drop pro bono into a conversation. He earned it. Tracy's family came, along with many mutual friends and Wendy's new circle. Even my boss showed up, joking about having a celebrity on staff. I raised a toast to Beth. On of the year. Later that night, as the crowd thinned out, I sat at the table with Beth and her mom, while Wendy read to the kids across the room. John snoozed on the couch nearby. Then my former mother-in-law dropped the big one. "Dave, how often are you going to let Tracy see the kids?" I'd been thinking about that all day. I guess it depends on her. If she wants to be in their lives and do right by them, I won't stand in her way. Every child needs a loving woman's influence to grow up balanced, right? She stared at me. "Dave," she said, "you're a smart man, but sometimes you're completely clueless." "What?" "Your kids are sitting over there with a woman who clearly loves them. And you." I turned, fast. Wendy looked up and saw the three of us staring at her. She blushed, catching on immediately. I stood and walked over. "This won't win any awards," I said, "but the role of mom seems to be vacant. Interested in applying?" She rose without a word and wrapped her arms around me. We kissed, long and deep, with the kids sandwiched between us like two snuggly sardines. It felt exactly right. Later that night, after saying goodbye to the guests and tucking the kids in, I scooped Wendy up and carried her to our room. On the threshold, she asked, "Have you proposed yet?" I thought I did. Did I say yes? "Not officially," she smiled. "Maybe I'll support you through school. You can be an engineer yet." Sounds perfect to me. Grandma might disagree, though. Epilogue. Tracy never contacted me again. Not about the kids, not about anything. The kids never asked for her either. With Wendy focused on other things, the bank finalized the sale of the store to a management and employee consortium. Henry, now a local hero, asked me to unveil a huge under new management banner. The store was back in business by the end of the first week. Soon, Wendy's bank account overtook mine. As agreed, she took her cash and left Mick with the mansion and some startup capital. Last I heard, they were still together, that is, until I ran into Mick. He mentioned his legal team was appealing the case, said some evidence shouldn't have been allowed in court. Coulson followed up and found that while their appeal was pending, the happy couple had gone on a month-long cruise in the West Indies. Pure coincidence, of course, that Mick received a fax while docked, one that revealed Tracy had a C-section and hysterectomy 9 years ago. That must have gone over well. And how could I possibly know they were in a country where hitting a woman is treated very seriously? Being a law-abiding man, I also never asked Wendy how a horde of homeless folks managed to get into the mansion and trash it beyond repair. And hey, if you leave your house completely unattended for a month, don't expect your insurance company to pay out. Now, where did I put the keys Beth gave me? And was that a burned-out Mercedes I saw off the highway? After my first year of college, I offered to work part-time while studying so we could balance things out. Wendy just smiled and said, "That's sweet, but I don't know how long I could tolerate being married to a man with no degree." Snob, but she's my snob.